The following program is a Town of Colony television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Top of the day to you. I'm Joe Doolittle.
And I'm Kate Detting.
And this is Story by Story.
Celebrating the human spirit.
And Kate and I are storytellers. And we're going to spend about an hour talking about storytelling, reflecting on storytelling. That's like thinking about it more. And then we're going to listen to some stories. And we have a guest teller. It's going to be just great. What's the most interesting thing you've been doing lately, Katie?
Well, I had I guess something on my bucket list.
A bucket list?
I checked off, but I want to do it again. It's I would like to do it more often. I took a group of almost 50 people to the Clark Art Museum, and I told in front of some of the paintings stories of Monet, John Singer Sargent, and Renoir.
Nice.
Whoa!
Yeah.
So, excuse me, but at times you've confessed to like guerrilla storytelling,
Yes.
where you stand next to a painting and kind of wait for somebody to come up and say, "Oh, I have a story about this painting." So it's just kind of like guerrilla storytelling squared. It's just that.
Well,
kind of
this was the Clark knew we were coming.
Okay.
They don't let outside docents speak in the galleries during the summertime because their galleries are too crowded. But this was September, and so I brought the people from the Friends of my library, the Clifton Park Half Moon Public Library.
Wonderful.
And Rona is the travel coordinator for them, so she took care of all the bus and money and all that kind of stuff. Koretsky. And so I was just the talent.
Wow.
And so I got to do an hour of stories and for half the group, and then I did it again. And in front of, they have a beautiful, huge gallery in the middle of their original building with all Impressionist paintings.
Yeah.
And I got to quote from one of those scathing newspaper reviews saying, "Oh, madness has taken over this street. There's a so-called art exhibit, and crazy people, including one woman, just throw paint on it and frame it and call it a work of art." But I got to sort of, all these paintings that were dumped on, including one that was in the 7th Impressionist exhibition, got to hear that was, everyone laughed when they heard those words. So
well, it would be a great thing to just have a little bit of a videotape of some of the reaction of people to the stories and to the paintings, because for those of you who haven't been over the mountain to the Clark, it's an extraordinary place, in not only for the art but the setting and just kind of the timbre of the place. Mm-hmm. Timbre, that's like an artistic term. And because I can recall once being there with my 9-year-old granddaughter, who's now like 12, and she draws and stuff, and we had been on our way from Vermont to take her home to Connecticut, and we just decided to stop by. And she had no idea of what was going to be in this art museum. And she walked in, and then she began to get it, and you couldn't drag her out. She was really caught by the place. So I think it's really wonderful that you got to make your bucket list happen in such a wonderful setting. Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. I've done it as a PowerPoint display other places, and I'll be doing it for the Academy for Lifelong Learning in a few more weeks. But in front of the paintings was way cool.
Yeah, that must have been something, Kate.
Yeah.
That must have been something.
So.
Wow.
What about you?
Well, I can't top that one. I really can't. But I must say that this past Sunday, I had one of the most comfortable storytelling events I've been at. It was up at Salem. You were on the card. And we have a word plays at Proctor's that we've had for a number of years. And one of our members took the initiative and created another space in the Fort Salem Theater in Salem, New York, which is, it's an hour's drive north.
And east.
And east.
Stop just before you hit Vermont. Yeah.
Although it was a great day to take a ride, it was a wonderful car. I didn't have to worry about any of the logistics. And some of my best friends were on the stage. And there was an infectious audience that laughed and applauded. And, I just sat there and I did tell a story I love to tell, but it was just a nice afternoon. And it's what we like to have happen with our stories.
Right.
I think. So that was my
Yes.
my
It was particularly fine.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
all the stories, they talked to each other. They resonated among each other, and
So that's got one more production this season because we really only Siri Allison only runs that program in the fall.
before they have to pay for the heat.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's and not only pay for the heat, you got to cut the wood, and you got to haul it in. And all, so it's up in the country. But anyway, so think about that for next year, and then we'll be giving you all the rest of the stuff that's going on. There's a very full program of events we've got for storytelling. But I could say we're actually blessed today, right? We have Kate II with us today. We have Kate Danaher. Am I saying that right?
Danaher.
I got my little Irish brogue on today. I know
Yes.
who's with us, and she's a person who's recently come to the area as a storyteller that we knew from way over there. And we're so pleased that you're here with us, Kate.
Thank you.
And see, I could just say Kate now,
Thanks,
and I
Vivian.
can
Yes. Thank you for inviting me.
You were here for the Riverway Storytelling Festival
Yes.
once upon a time.
Yes, once upon a time. I remember you very well.
Yes.
I can remember talking with you in that
Yes.
big, beautiful room upstairs near the Brussels sage.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Right. So
Green outside. Yeah. That former church. Yeah.
Former
Yeah,
church, yeah.
I came here because my daughter found out about it, so I wrote to the people and talked to them about it, and it was I think I was considered a
Showcase
teller. Or something.
right.
I told one story,
Right, yeah.
but I came up here because my daughter started school at RPI.
Ah,
So that's why I came. And that is why I am here today, because I moved from Philadelphia. Well, Philadelphia is where I'm from, but actually lived in Delaware, which I consider a suburb of Philadelphia.
well, they don't have their own airport. They got to go to Philadelphia
Yeah,
to
I
catch a
used
plane.
to. A little
I grew up
one.
in Southern Connecticut, a
Oh, right.
suburb of New
So,
York
yes,
City.
but moved up to be near the grandchildren.
Ah,
But talking about art, I have to tell a story. I always wanted to get my children interested in art too. So in the area, we have the great Brandywine River Museum.
oh, right.
In the
So,
Philadelphia.
well, in the barns and all
Oh,
those other places.
beautiful art, right. So.
And the Rocky, I think of it as the Rocky Museum. It
The
wasn't
Philadelphia Museum
Oh,
of Art.
right.
Yeah.
Well, this one day I took my daughter and son to the the Brandywine River Museum, and my daughter was like, nah. She's very sports oriented at the time. Now she loves art now, but I'd say, well, let's just go into each room and then you pick out your favorite painting, and then she'd go into a room and then she'd go that one, and then she'd run it, and she was so anxious to get out of there. Whereas my son, who was only 5 at the time, he's looking at all the paintings, and Sarah finally goes up to him and says, "Will you hurry up?" And he said, "Sarah, I am looking at a leaf."
I'm looking at a leaf.
He was so detail oriented. Yeah, it was really fun.
So, but the Brandywine Museum, that's the N.C. Wythe paintings, like
yes,
Long John Silver and all those things.
Yes.
Oh, Treasure
Yeah,
Island. Oh,
beautiful.
Yes.
Yes.
But back to your art. How did you get started as a storyteller?
Okay, I got started as a storyteller. Let's see, how far should I go back? Well, the actual storytelling started when Eamon Kelly's wife gave me his collected works after he had passed away. I was over in Ireland at a restaurant having dinner, and she was one of our guests. She walked into the restaurant with the book under her arm. Before she even sat down, she said, "Here now, you tell these stories."
Now, you need to tell us a little bit about.
I'll tell you about Eamon. Eamon was an Abbey Theatre actor. I lived in Dublin for a year. I went to every one of his plays because I knew him. I'll tell you that in a minute how I knew him. But and considered Ireland's master storyteller. So these are wonderful stories, very funny, that he collected and told every Sunday night on Radio Erin during the 60s.
Okay.
Yes, and people would sit around the fire listening before TV and was popular, listening to Eamon stories on Radio Erin. So it was very, very
So, if you
exciting.
will, a Garrison Keillor sort of.
Yes,
figure.
yes, exactly, in Ireland, yeah, yes. Now,
But telling traditional stories,
Traditional
not
stories.
his own fictitious? No.
Fictitious.
it's, yeah.
His own, the stories he writes, yes.
Yes, and also stories that people would send him. He collected stories. So he was just phenomenal. And we got to know him. I have to tell you this story. We got to know him because he came to America with a group of actors with a play, Brian Friel's play called Philadelphia, Here I Come. And which was exciting to Philadelphia.
yeah.
My father was like, "Oh my goodness, this is wonderful." If the play did well, the Philadelphia, Here I Come was going from Philadelphia to Boston. If it did well in Boston, it was going to New York City, where it did stay on Broadway for an entire year.
Whoa.
So, back to Philadelphia. My father said, "The Irish actors are coming to Philadelphia. I'm going down and invite them to
Home to dinner.
I said to him, "Do you know Irish actors?" I love the theater, so my mother used to take me all the time in New Jersey to the Surflight Summer Theater. Oh, every week it was only $5 a ticket in an old big garage. And so anyway, I said, "You know the actors?" I was amazed, and he said, "Oh, no, I don't know them at all," he said, "but you wouldn't want them going back to Ireland saying they received no hospitality in Philadelphia." So down he went, and we had a big dinner at our house, and my father became very good friends with Eamon. Because it turns out they lived a stone's throw from each other, as they used to say in Ireland, just down the road a piece. My father was in Limerick and Eamon's in County Kerry, but again, a suburb of each other.
They're over in the west. They're boys
But
from
the
the west.
counties
Okay.
do actually touch?
Korean.
They're adjoining
Yes,
counties?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so it's a small stone, not okay.
Right.
You
So
don't need a
so then every year we would get in the mail at Christmas time or whenever one was published, a little book of Eamon stories. All the time they were coming. I have a whole collection of little ones. Then they were finally collected into the big book, The Collected Works of Eamon Kelly, which is the one that his wife gave to me. Now, I did become friendly with them because I stayed in Dublin for a year. I went to the National University of Ireland, my junior year of college, and I went to see every play that Eamon was in at the theater, wherever he was, at the Peacock or the Abbey, all the plays he was in. And his wife also, Maura, she went by Maura O'Sullivan. She was an actress as well. Went to everything and used to babysit for the children, so it was wonderful. So that's why I didn't jump on it right away. I said to Maura, no. I mean, I had such respect for Eamon. And his abilities, his wonderful. I said, I couldn't possibly do that. I dreaded sounding like, do you remember the Irish Spring commercial years ago? Bigorra or something, it was terrible. The accent was, I'm like, couldn't you get a real Irish person or something like it? It was so bad. So I didn't want to sound not right telling the story,
Irish.
stagey Irish. I was like, I said,
Crazy.
I know. I said, no, I can't do that. And she said to me, yes, you can. You know the old people, and you can do it. Which is true. I do know the old people. I used to go down to the village frequently. I say down to the village, from Dublin down to Athay. It used to take me as long to get from Limerick City to Athay as it did to get from Dublin to Limerick, which is across
the country. Yeah.
And there was a bus you could get out of my father's town, but it went out one week and came back the other week, so it was a little difficult getting in and out. But so I did go down to the country a lot of times, and I did sit many a time in these old houses with the hearths and the storytelling. I do know the old people. It's true, and so I thought, I should probably do it. And I came home and told my sister, and she said, she had the same reaction. She said, you can't do that. She knew Eamon well, too. I said, I know, but I'm going to. So then I did try. A year passed before I put my toe in the water. And I said, all right, I'm going to learn a story. So I practiced one story. I'll tell it to you. It's a short one. And I thought, one night in Philadelphia at the Irish pub, I thought, I'll practice it on my husband and my son. So then I'll tell you the story.
This is the same guy that was in the museum looking at the leaf.
Looking at the leaf.
Okay, just wanted to get it.
Yeah.
Just to make it, yes.
Yeah.
He's an actor now in L.A. I hope he gets back to his art. Someday when he stops acting, he will. So anyway, a fierce argument broke out one night between Batty O'Brien and Coneen Casey, a thin, wiry fella, as to how long it had been since the first Irishman set foot in America. I can tell you that, says O'Brien, a man of large proportions and an historian to boot. The first Irishman to set foot in America was St. Brendan the Navigator, for 'twas he discovered America, although he kept his mouth shut about it. How long ago would that be so, says Casey, since St. Brendan set foot in America? Well, says O'Brien, St. Brendan was born in Feenit in the County Kerry around the year 500 AD, and he died in Annacoon in the County Galway in 580. Now, let's say he did his navigating in his prime between the years of 525 and 540. Add all that up, take it from the year we're living in, and 'twill bring you to within a hen's kick of 1,400 years since St. Brendan set foot in America. Is that all you know, says Casey. Sure, Irish people were going to America before that. Can you prove it, says O'Brien. Oh, I can prove it, says Casey, or otherwise I wouldn't have drawn it down. My own grand-uncle Tade Flord was going to America after the famine in a sailing vessel. And they were becalmed one evening, about 200 miles off the coast of the County Clare. So they threw out the anchor and went to bed. What did they want up for? Well, in the morning there was a stiff breeze blowing and they pulled in the anchor. And what do you think was on the hook of it? The wheel of a horse car. And what does that prove, says O'Brien? Oh, it proves, says Casey, that Irish people were going to America by road before the flood. Yes. So, get this now. I told this story to my husband and son, and my son very seriously looked at me and said, can you guess? What could he have said?
Really, Mom?
No, he said, what flood?
What?
I said 16 years of Catholic education down the drain.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know about Noah.
Yeah, well, I was brought up Catholic, and the Old Testament was not stressed
as, no,
Yeah.
right, not as much at all. No, I don't
Though
think we were
Noah-
allowed to read the Old Testament. It was like off limits or something.
Yeah, well,
like.
wasn't there a reading from the Old Testament, a reading from the New Testament?
I guess
Every
there were, but
Sunday.
the nuns didn't encourage the Old Testament at all.
Yeah.
No.
Well, there's a lot in it that's...
Well,
There's
there's
a
a
lot
lot of, there's that taking the rib and all that other stuff, you know, you wouldn't want to get too close to that.
I know.
Adam and Eve, and then you kind of jumped over everything else.
So,
Right.
so back up just a bit, you know, so on the younger set, there was some question about some of the facts. But how did the rest of the crowd deal with the story when you told it?
Oh, my husband. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, they liked it. They said, "Oh, continue. Yes, you should do this." But I just worked on. So what I do is I have 4 recordings. Eamon also would send us his recordings. 4 recordings of him, plus some live recordings. We used to go when he would come to and do live storytelling in New York City. We would go up to hear him, and I listen over and over and over to him. Well, for a long time I did, and then I get the feeling sometimes I need to re-listen to him just to keep his inflections, his words in my vocabulary, everything. I'd walk around the supermarket when I was first learning that song and be like, a fierce argument, fierce like that, fierce argument broke out one night between Batty. Like, I think people thought I was Batty. I'd be walking around, just repeating lines and to really study the art of his, what came to him maybe so naturally.
Right.
But maybe not.
Joe's that kind of, Joe's, I think, a natural raconteur.
Yes. Although one time he told stories. I was teaching at the time at Rosemont College, and we had a club called the Prose Club. And I came back one year, and the man that ran it was saying, "Oh, I'd love to have a storyteller this year." And I said, "I know just the person, and he's coming. He's coming to New York." I called him up. I said, "Eamon, would you come down to Rosemont and tell stories?" And he said, "Sure. I'll be over for a week or whatever." And so he came down. Oh, I made a big splash at Rosemont with bringing Eamon. Well, they had no idea he would be so good. They said, "Oh my word, he was so good." But I did notice he had some things like written on his hand. So he must be like all of us.
Yes.
What's the next thing I want to tell?
So, you have that story of
That was a story in your story, right?
by road before the flood story.
Yes.
You'll have to tell me later what the actual title is. But you have 2 other stories prepared. So, would you tell one of them now?
Okay. One of the funny things about the old people is what they didn't know back in the day. So, here's one about something they didn't know. It is always a mystery to me how the women got on before the looking glass was invented. Or some of the men, if it went to that, they're often enough in front of it. Well, the looking glass was invented, and there was this man that was dull of the fact. He lived in an out-of-the-way place, a kind of backward community, and there was an excursion going to town, so he took advantage of the low fare to travel out. And when he got into the town, he walked down the main street and into a little shop where he saw a heap of these shiny things up on the counter, little oblongs no bigger than a small cigarette box. So he took one up and put it in front of his face to have a look at it, and he said, "Ha! Picture of my father wherever they got it." And he said to the woman inside in the counter, "Where did ye buy these?" And she said, "They came from London." "Oh, London." He said, "That's very funny." He said, "No." He said, mumbling to himself, he said, "My father was never in London." "Oh, maybe he went to London on his way to heaven." Well, he asked the woman, "How much are these going for?" Well, sure, 'twas only a trifle. So he bought what he thought was a picture of his father and put it inside in his pocket. And every opportunity he got that day, he was taking out what he thought was a picture of his father and admiring it. It was a man he had great respect for, had been dead for some time. But when he got home, he was very careful not to let the wife see the picture of the father. She didn't have the same respect for the father-in-law. Which of them have? But as we know, much don't escape the women. And she was wondering what it was that was taking him to his pocket and he was admiring. Well, one day didn't her chance come when a neighbor's chimney went on fire, and a very serious occurrence at that, with a thatched roof. And the little man, when he heard all the hillaboher, well, he ran out and in his excitement, didn't he forget to take his coat? Well, he was no sooner gone than her ladyship dived into the inside pocket, took out the looking glass, and put it in front of her face. "Ha!" she said. "Who's this old hairpin? And if that's the attraction that's drawing him to the cities, I'll soon put a stop to his gallop." And she put the looking glass back into the pocket, and she geared herself for battle. And we all know what women can be in such a situation. Well, the little man came home after doing a good turn for the neighbor, and of course she approached him. "Who's this old Dolly Vargan you have there inside in your pocket?" He said, that's not a picture of any woman. He said, "That's a picture of my father with a dress on him. Ho, you'll hear more about this." And putting on her hat and coat, she went over to the presbytery. And Father John, when he heard the yarn, well, you could have knocked him down with a feather. For he said that he knew her husband quite well, and he was a nice, pious, quiet, accurate, genteel sort of fella, and such a thing had never been attributed to him. Ho, Father, he has me caught up to the ball of my eye. And what's more, he has a picture of this other woman there inside in his pocket. "Oh, that won't do," said Father John. "That would be a nice headline to be giving our congregation. I'll have to go to the house and reprimand him." So the two of them set off. And when they reached the house, Father John, he lifted the latch of the half door and walked in, and he said, "Here now, my good man, this is enough about this. Hand me out the picture of that other woman you have there inside in your pocket." Well, the little fellow was so upset at the turn things were taking. He was hoping that a hole had come into the floor and swallow him. But what could he do? Only go to his coat and take out the picture of his father and hand it to Father John. And Father John, when he looked there, he said, he got into a fit of laughing. He said, "The two of ye need to have your heads examined. You're a right pair of geniuses. Isn't that the parish priest that was here before me?"
Oh, great. Great. I didn't know how you were going to end it, but that's not too bad. That's a great ending.
Oh,
Loved it.
thank you.
Loved it. And the old people, that was the reference. When you first made it, I wasn't quite sure, because I thought maybe old people were like the Finns and all those other people.
Oh, not that old, no.
Not that old.
I do have a story about Finn McCool and the giant from Scotland, but that's on my children's album, children's CD. Yeah.
And what is the name of that charming little story?
Of the
story you just told.
Oh, The Looking Glass.
The Looking Glass.
Yes. Yes. And Eamon might be there. I'm not sure. He is on YouTube. You can YouTube Eamon, Eamon Kelly, and see him live performing there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
great. That's.
Mm-hmm.
I have a faux daughter-in-law.
A faux daughter-in-law?
Well, we have a number of adopted grandchildren and their parents who have some family association with us, and one of the families, Erin Kelly, is the faux daughter-in-law.
Okay.
And she's married to a neighbor who grew up down the street from us, who was in our house. So I just think I have to go check out Eamon Kelly and see if there's a connection, because you never can tell.
She might be related.
Well, she might be related.
You never know.
She's a pretty good lawyer, so she learned how to tell a story.
Yeah. That's good.
Now, when you grew up in Philadelphia, and before you moved up to Troy, did you ever live anyplace else, or were you always kind of based in Philadelphia?
Based in Philadelphia until I went to graduate school in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin. Milwaukee.
You've done time in Madison.
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
I did
okay.
Yes. But before I went there, I lived in Ireland for a year,
Yeah,
as
that's
I
great,
mentioned.
yeah.
Yes,
And it sounded like your father was from Ireland.
my father was from County Limerick,
Okay.
a little town called Athay. So small, as I said, bus going in that people in Ireland, when they would ask me, "Where's your family from?" and I said, "My father's from Athay," and they'd say, "Oh, you mean Athy?" Athy in County Kildare. And I said, "No, Athay. No, you mean Athy." They thought I was mispronouncing it. I'm like, "No, Athay, Athea, County Limerick. Very small.
Wow.
Beautiful little town."
Yeah.
I mean, when I went over there, first time when I was 12 years old, and my father was so excited. It's in a valley. And he said, we're coming around the bend, and he said, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. You'll see it soon. You'll see it soon. And I finally saw it with the church steeple, rising up above. Oh, I was like, isn't that so sweet? Oh, one main street, one cross street.
Right.
Yes, I loved it. Loved being over there.
Now, we have Barbara McCarthy's from County Limerick.
She's from County Clare, but it's just
That's very
outside of-
close.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
She's from a little town. This is Barbara McCarthy is an Irish storyteller who tells around, and we should get you together.
Near Saratoga Springs.
Okay.
And she's from County Clare and from a little town called Quinn.
Okay.
And I've been in Quinn, and Quinn sounds like a tie. It's got maybe 3 streets.
Yeah.
It's got a crossroad and a V.
Okay.
But,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Oh, I'd love to meet her. Yeah,
she's
lucky that she was actually born. I was always wishing I could be. I was born in Ireland. Then I would feel at the time I felt like an imposter when I first started telling Irish stories, and I wasn't Irish. But one time I was performing up in New Jersey. We were opening for Tommy Sands.
Oh, wow.
I have a music partner, Amy Cloud, and we had a little group, Danaher and Cloud, and it was a combination of stories and songs, although all the songs were stories, so it was very nice, and Irish, and a mix of her originals. And I confessed to Tommy that I felt like an imposter, and he said, "Stop. You Americans, your father, all that generation, they did so much for us. Going to America, sending the money back all the time in the Christmas envelopes and supporting us." He said, never doubt what you're doing. Wow. Never. So then I was like, okay, Tommy Sands told me that.
There you go.
There you go.
That's a different kind of blessing, but I'll take it.
Yes, it was very good.
We want to pause for just a minute, but I want to come back and talk a little bit about your fiddling.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Because
he's always fiddling around.
fiddling around. Kate, what's going on in the greater world of storytelling?
Well, coming attractions starting on Sunday, November 5th at 2 p.m. You are a part of We Are Our Brothers and Sisters, a dramatic reading of a new play to be held at the First Reformed Church in the Stockade section of Schenectady. So tell us a little about that.
Well, the roots of this are a play that a friend of mine wrote, Marcia Mortimer, about Union College and the abolitionist movement. And she wrote it as 5 soliloquies of some of the famous principals from Union College. And it was fine as it was, but it didn't flow together. And we have a writing group. So I was having coffee with the writing group, and the leader of that group said, I've always wanted to write a play. And I said, do you want to rewrite a play?
Oh.
So this play deals with the issues of the Civil War in Union College, and it takes place at the wake of Eliphalet Nott, who was the longest tenured president and influenced a great number of people like William Seward, like Clarence Duryea, who started the black church, the Duryea Church in Schenectady, Chester Arthur. Interestingly enough, both of the secretaries of state of the Confederacy in the United States, Seward and a guy named Holmes, were Union College grads. And we bring all this together in the personalities of the day and the time with Eliphalet and his wife, who's there. And the most important character is actually Moses Viney. And Moses is an escaped slave who went to work and became the confidant of Eliphalet Nott. And their relationship is one of the wonders of that generation. So that all comes together in that play.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
Very.
and you're the glue again.
Well, I stumbled into it. I got to be William Seward, and I read the part of William Seward. I wanted to be Eliphalet because he's kind of an interesting character, but Seward's interesting because he shows up at the wake, and the wake is in January of 1866. So he's about 9 months from his own attack and attempted assassination, where he was severely wounded and disfigured. So that's in the play, and I get to read that part. Ooh.
But by glue, I meant that you put together the pieces.
Yeah.
Or the grease? Maybe you're the grease, not the
I'd
glue.
rather be Greece. It's, but it's going to be fun, and we hope to take it to. Our next step is to take it to Union and have students read the parts because it's their history. So that's our next. That'll be in the spring.
But you were also the grease of putting Marnie Gillard and her 5-part
We did that
story
at-
of Grace O'Malley.
Right, we
Rania.
did that.
Oh.
We did that at the First Reformed Church too, which was an interesting place for the story of this great Catholic lady.
Right.
But that's the way it worked out.
And Joe not only knows Marnie, who's a local storyteller, but someone from your college was writing music about Grania. So it was you'd hear story, and then you'd hear some music about it.
Wow.
And it was a glorious
we gotta do something
production.
with that. I stopped to have coffee with a friend, Tom O'Hare, who lives over near Boston, and I said, "What's the most interesting thing you've been doing?" Kind of like I always ask Kate. And he says, "Oh, probably writing a cantata about Grace O'Malley."
Oh my.
And I go, "Holy crow! You want to meet Marnie Gillard?" And the rest was history. So,
Yes. So.
Obviously, Bowling.
I know Marnie.
Oh yeah, Marnie's.
I met Marnie the same
Yes.
time I met
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Marnie's in the sisterhood here. Yeah.
Yes, I was so excited. I thought, of all places now to move to, this where I know some people, like people said, "Oh, you're moving to Troy, you won't know anybody," and I'm like, "Well, I do know Marnie Gillard, and I know because I've told many times at the Hudson with Karen
Pillsworth,
yes,
yeah.
and yes, Karen invited me there.
And
I
that
told-
other-
that
other-
down on the
Hoolie on the
Hoolie on the Hudson.
Right.
Hudson.
And
Yes.
that other Italian Irish lady,
I know.
Lorraine Gallardi.
Lorraine,
yes.
she's fabulous. They're both so lovely, and so I'm like, well, it's not going to be too bad. And then when I found the story circle, and I thought, oh, I have to sign up for this so I can meet my old friends. Although I told Marnie I was coming, and we still haven't had lunch. I'm swamped with. I only actually technically landed in Troy, although I had dropped some things off before, but everything landed here in December 28th. I had Christmas in Delaware for 20 people on the 25th, and 3 days later the movers came. Then I go to Florida for the winter,
Right.
so I was January 1st we left. So back in Troy only since the beginning of July. I love the idea of that play. I hope I'm back. I probably won't be. When in the spring is it? Probably you
We
said
haven't set the
spring.
date yet because we've
Okay.
got to kind of coach
Yeah.
the union people into
I
doing
do a lot of acting too. That's my other. That's the the interesting thing talking about Eamon. When he first performed in that Philadelphia Here I Come, that was at the Walnut Street Theater, and one of my was it my last play? No, I've done some since that. But I also performed at the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia Here I Come.
Oh.
Yeah, played the part of Madge. Although Eamon was on the main stage and we were on the, a smaller stage, but I do love acting. As my favorite thing is Irish parts, and so that's.
Well, something else you're looking forward to, I hope, is on Tuesday, November 7th, you will be the feature performer at Joe's First Tuesday's Tales and Stuff in the
Yes.
Stockade, just a couple wiggles from the First Reformed Church. Stories of Coming Home.
Yes.
And so if you want more of Kate Danaher, show up at
Thanks.
Arthur's in the Stockade.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
Presenting.
It's always fun.
You see.
This is a great stories.
I was named Catherine Winifred from my grandmother, Mary Winifred Kylie Ike.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
and she was named for her grandmother, Winifred Shaughnessy Kiley, who we believe came over because of
I
the
would say
famine.
the famine.
Yes.
Yeah, Kylie is a good.
Yes. Oh, good.
Good Irish
Kylie,
name.
Kelly. No, Kylie. Okay, back to what's coming up. And the next day, Wednesday, November 8th, is the storytelling open mic up in Saratoga Springs. And we alternate between Cafe Lena, with the oldest continuously operating coffee house in the country, and a senior residence. But in November, it's at Cafe Lena, and the featured teller is Sandy Schumann. It's a modest price to go in there, and it's, if you haven't been to the remodeled Cafe Lena, you really must go. It still looks like, it's sort of, she got a facelift.
Got a facelift. It's
Yes,
like
she's still recognly The brick wall is
better
there.
than Botox, I'd say.
Much better than Botox. It's sort of like reborn. A
Great
fairy
place.
came by and
And if you want to get up there a little early, there's a lot of very good restaurants right around the corner and
across the street. Yeah.
Oh.
Make a fun evening of it.
And you didn't even mention a single bar. I'm surprised.
Well, there's the party glass, which I'll mention to you because you have to go up the party glass. If you haven't been
I
to
have
the
a
party,
nice tune that says that's the parting glass.
It's like 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saratoga isn't. Downtown isn't that big. And then Shawnee Eves, this is a jam-packed week. On November 10th, Joe and Claire Nolan will be there telling stories of Irish families at 7 at the Irish American Heritage Museum in Albany. However, then they're opening the floor for people to share their family stories, no matter where they're from, whether they're Irish or not. And Joe actually is not. But
I'm full
a
Irish,
wannabe?
but it's a story I'm going to tell that night about how that happened.
Okay.
It's actually, unfortunately, it's actually a true story about my scallywag great-grandfather.
Oh,
And then we have one of our premier events, our being Story Circle of the Capital District. Our 22nd annual Telebration will be at the GE Theater in Proctor's in Schenectady, and the topic is challenges. And our time has changed to 3:30 in the afternoon to start, because the Green Market, the farmers market, moves inside Proctor's. It's actually a performing arts center.
and what date was
The 12th, November 12th.
November 12th.
And the Green Market has slimed its way, grown into the GE Theater, where we perform Telebration. So it's a farmer's market until 2, and to change it back over to a theater, they need a little time. So that's why we're starting at 3:30. But as always, there's stories celebrating the human spirit. And I'll be telling Margaret French, Marnie Gillard, Christy Keegan, Bonnie Mayan, Claire Nolan, Nancy Marie Payne, and Sandy Schumann. Karen Pillsworth loves being our MC, and we love
Great
having
MC,
her
great
being
MC.
our MC.
Great. Oh, I have to go and see Karen
Yes. So,
and hear you. And the new
Great.
ones, the others.
Oh, we got to move on. We only have 60 more minutes. And then the Interfaith Story Circle probably, most likely, will be having their program on Thursday, November 16th, The Power of Story to Shift Our Beliefs, at the Temple Bereth Shalom in Troy. The featured teller, most probably, their plans aren't quite solidified, Beth Sabo Novak. And you can find out more at their website once it's solidified, withourvoice.org/IFSC, Interfaith Story Circle. And that's their 25th anniversary. Our next storytelling Story Circle meeting will be right here in the Colony Town Library, Tuesday, November 21st, 6 to 8 p.m., to share stories under development. Only telling, no reading, please. And listeners, as always, are welcome.
So if you're thinking about becoming a storyteller, you don't have to go to the pub with your husband and your kid. You can come to the Story Circle meeting and try it out right in front of some storytellers.
That's good.
And if you can't join us any other way, please go to our YouTube channel. You can get to it either at go to storycircle@proctors.org and click on YouTube, or go to YouTube/story-by-story. YouTube.com, of course.
My cup runneth over. This is amazing.
Okay. Now
amazing.
We only have 14 minutes left. Do you have a story that's less than 14 minutes long?
Yes, I do. I'll tell you what. This is also about something that was new in the old country. There was a station published one time for Larry. That's when the priest come and says Mass in the house, a function going back to the penal times when there were no churches. Now, Larry, he was a connection of my own, a man who lived to be nearly 90 years of age and was only sick 1 week in his life. That was the week he died, of course. And I don't remember this too well myself, but the old people I heard talking, and what kept it so fresh in their memories was something comical to take place the morning of the station. Now, the parish priest we had there at the time was a trifle hasty, a little impatient, and stern of demeanor. And signs by innocent people were peppering in dread of him. Although to go to the house, you couldn't meet a nicer person. Jeremiah Horgan was telling me he went to the house for a letter of freedom. He was marrying some bird from an outside community. As things turned out, he'd be better off if he didn't. But that's another story. Came the morning of the station, and all the neighbors were in Larry's yard. The morning turned out wet, but country people don't mind the rain. They say it never melted anyone. Just then, a son of Jerry Dan Tygeens put his head round the corner and said, "He's coming!" Well, all the neighbors belted into Larry's kitchen, leaving Larry there to welcome the PP, the parish priest. And Larry, he would rather any other job. He would rather be draining the Dead Sea with a silver spoon. He was very shy and distant in himself. But he didn't have long to wait when the parish priest came sailing into the yard on a saddle horse, holding over his head a big black round roof on top of a walking cane. Well, Larry nearly fainted, for that was the first umbrella that was seen in that part of the country. Well, Larry took the horse from the Father John and he put it into the little makeshift stable in the side of the house, and Father John made his way into the kitchen. And when those inside saw the doorway darkening, well, they all turned around, to make themselves small behind their neighbor, in case any awkward question would be put to him. And when they turned around secondly, Father John had the umbrella open, the way the rain would be running off of it, and it would be nice and dry when he'd be going home by and by. That is, when confessions would be heard, Mass would be said, breakfast would be ate, and dues would be collected. Well, the morning wore on, and all these things happened, and the grace of God, glory be to him, was in the house, and Father John was in the parlor having his breakfast. And the women were up and down, taking the legs off one another with excitement. And Larry's wife, her face as red as a coal of fire, she said, if you saw the look he gave me when he took the top off the eggs." "Were they too done?" says Kate. "Like bullets, girl. And I wouldn't mind, but I told that daughter of mine to watch him. But there you are. Every time you want everything to go right for you, that's the day it would break them out on you." The men, of course, they were in the kitchen, sitting around the umbrella, admiring it, same as if it was a German bomber. And they were saying, wasn't it a great wonder someone didn't invent that sooner? How handy it would be to prop it over the mouth of a barrel on a wet day when you'd have a goose or a hen hatching. Well, just then, Father John came out of the parlor. "Well, men," says he, "what is the morning doing?" "Oh, 'tis clearing, Father," said one forward sort of a fella. "Well, then, I must be going. I have many things to attend to." "Good morning, Father," they all said, very anxious to have him leave because the bottle wouldn't be opened until he had departed. He was a strict TT, that's teetotaler. Well, Larry got up, and he got the horse for Father John out to the stable, and he walked Father John down the passageway. That is a very nice custom we do have in our part of the country. If we think highly of you, we'll walk you down to the main road, down past the gander. That can be a cranky animal. But if we don't think that highly of you, well, we'll only go as far as the half door and say in our own minds, may the road rise to meet you and hit you a welt. But at any rate, there they were, Father John and Larry, down on the main road, when Father John remembered his umbrella. Run back to the house, says he to Larry, and get me my umbrella. Well, you didn't have to say this thing secondly to Larry. He ran back to the house and into the house, breathless, and he took the umbrella by the leg. 'Twas open always, and he brought it to the door before him. But the umbrella would not go out. He turned it upside down, sideways, every which way he could, and the umbrella remained inside. And he was getting in a terrible sweat. He looked to his friends and he said, well, if it came in, it must go out. Oh, they looked at him and they had great pity for him. And one fella said, I wonder, how about if we take the door off the hinges? So they took the door off the hinges, off the bolt-on. The umbrella remained inside. Another fella said, I wonder now, if you took the two sides of the frame off the door, two sides of the frame were removed off the door. The umbrella remained inside. There's only one thing now, says Larry. Knock the wall. Oh. So a sledge was procured, and Father John, when he heard all the banging, well, he doubled back to the house, and when he saw the men, he said, what are ye at? And Larry said, well now, Father John, I think if I could get that cornerstone out there now, the mushroom would sail out no trouble. Move back into the kitchen for me, says Father John. So all the men moved back into the kitchen, and Father John went inside and he took the umbrella by the leg, as the men called it. And he was a big man, an overcoat and all, on a wet day. Well, they couldn't see what was happening. But of course, he closed the umbrella, walked out the door, opened it up again with great flair, and walked down the passageway, leaving them all there speechless. And Larry then, after a moment of amazement, he turned to them and he said, say what ye like, they have the power.
Oh, you gotta love that stuff. You gotta love it.
Oh, they're good. They're so
priceless.
good.
That
yes.
is priceless.
And they are stories that are so true, that the people experience these things. My father told me stories too. I have those. I include them in my things. Such funny. They're very, what I love about these, they're funny. I don't tell try not to tell any sad stories. They're sad tunes. I think the Irish express themselves in their slow airs. They tunes that of melancholy. When you mentioned your family, people leaving in the famine, and they're very beautiful. But they always have a funny story to tell.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and you have to be prepared. In Ireland, this is why it's so wonderful. All people learn some stories. You could be at any night when you were at a house for a gathering. You could be called on to tell a story, sing a song, play a tune, and you would not, be unprepared.
It's
not at all. You had to. So it's a great tradition that I can't get over this area, how full of this tradition it is. It's really great. Well, thank you too, and everyone else.
Well, it's the way we've learned and taught people over the years. So I think that's the other thing about it. But there is something about spending time in Ireland. and I've spent a lot of time in pubs. It's one of the things I like to do.
Yeah.
There's something like an Irish pub because of all the other things that are going on in the pub.
I know.
And it's just really great.
But you know, in Ireland, I told in a pub in Ireland. Well, I didn't want to, but a friend of the family said, "No, you're going to tell in the pub." I'm like, they don't want to hear me start. You know, they're talking to each other. They don't want to hear the. No. Oh no, you're going to tell stories in the pub. This was on us. She said, "We're going over. We're talking to Joe Brown." Go into Joe Brown, and he says, "Okay, got it." This was Sunday or Sunday, I guess, whatever. 2 days later, there was a little notice in the paper. Kate Danaher from Philadelphia and Philadelphia/Athe, telling stories Tuesday night. I was like, they got it in the paper that fast? Tuesday night. So he was happy because the pub was packed full.
Yeah.
Everybody was wondering, I wonder if that's Bob Danaher's daughter. People that remembered.
Yeah.
So sure enough, we're in the pub, and I'm thinking, nobody's going to stop for this story. And I just thought, I don't know, whatever. Then the pub master comes over to me and says, "Are you ready?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Quiet, quiet." Made the entire pub get quiet for the storytelling. I was amazed. Yeah, so that was good. It was fun. I told with an Irish teller that night, and my cousins came late, and they were outside, and you would never interrupt a storyteller in the middle of a story, so they're waiting outside. And here's the good thing. I was telling the story, and my two cousins are out there arguing, and the lady named Daisy, a real Irish lady,
Real Irish
was
lady.
telling a story, and one cousin is saying, "That's Daisy," and that's Kate, and they said, "No, that's Daisy." "No, it's Kate." "No, it's Daisy." They couldn't tell, so
There you
that was
go.
good.
There you go.
I was happy with that. So my years of study and listening to Eamon
Yes.
have been paying off.
And some of the phrases, of course, it's just gone in and out of my head, but some of the TT and the PP I like.
Yes.
But also some of the similes and metaphors.
Yes,
are
He's very good at that. He's got such colorful
The hen's kick.
within a hen's kick. Oh, yes.
I'd heard that one before.
Yeah.
But do we have time to talk about the fiddle?
We have 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes.
to
Well, we
fiddle
probably-
and say goodbye.
Okay.
Probably can't do the fiddle in 2 minutes.
No.
But you do play the fiddle.
I do play the fiddle. I learned from John Vesey, another great Irish master from Philadelphia. And he's wonderful, wonderful fiddle player. And I'll play the fiddle. I always incorporate it, you know, and I learned from him. And many Saturday nights, years and years of Saturday nights at his kitchen table, learning from this master. My husband would say, how'd you do tonight? Don't tell me, he said, you've got to develop the bow hand. Because John had a great long bow hand. He doesn't like, fiddle away on a, some do on a short piece of bow. No, John, great pull. So I have a few solos on the CDs that I did with my friend Amy. And so, but I love
those. So that's your website, Danaher and Cloud.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Kate's Irish Stories.
It's Irish.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have to say goodbye.
Well, this has been one of the fastest hours we've ever spent.
Whoosh!
Whoosh.
Well, with so much going on,
Maybe the bus will be by next week to take us home. That's a good line, too. It was wonderful having you here
Thank
and meeting
you
and
so
we look forward to
much.
having
I'm
you
so thrilled
participate
to-
around our
Yeah.
table of storytelling.
I'm thrilled to be in the Troy area. I love it already. I love it up here. Yes. So thank you so
Good
much.
night, Kate.
Good afternoon, Joe.
Thank you.
The show is broadcast on different systems at different times, so we're time crazy. And thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll find time to squeeze some storytelling into your life one way or another.
Much good cheer.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And and all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again,